Welcome to Vintage Weights PGH. My name is Rob, and this is the Mars Bar from Solid Bar Fitness. It's a safety squat bar for low bar. And let's get into the history. The safety squat bar was invented by Jesse Hoagland, and a recent update in the past year would be it leaves the Mars bar looking a little naked, whereas the 2.0 is 82 inches long. Since there is a lot of criticism out there in general that they come off a little cheap, so a total cost difference of about $100. Last year at Home Gym Con 2024, I was fortunate enough to bring this home. I had tried it the year before at the very first Home Gym Con, and it had been in the back of my mind on and on and on throughout the year. Once I brought it home, I started using it regularly in my training. And you, viewer, can benefit from my year-long use of this because I'm going to point out in this video what exactly this bar is, the differences between the original Mars bar and the Mars Bar 2.0, a little bit of history about specialty bars for squatting, as well as recommendations based on my experience for what lifters might enjoy this bar the most. It runs $650-ish plus about $100 in shipping, so you're gonna wanna watch this video before you purchase. If you enjoy this video and you decide to purchase the Mars Bar, please go to the Rogue Fitness affiliate link that is in the description of this video. By using my link, you'll pay the same cost as if you just went there on your own, but the difference is you'll support my channel by sending a couple pennies my way. I really appreciate you using any of my affiliate links to support the channel. When it comes down to it, I have no contractual obligation to Mars Bar, Solid Fitness, or Rogue Fitness, so I'm still going to give you an honest and straightforward review of the Mars Bar because I want you to make the best purchase for you and your gym. So what is the Mars Bar? In general, this is sort of like a safety squat bar. Don't tell Zach Mars, the inventor, I said that because he's quick to point out that it's not a safety squat bar. I say in general because it kind of looks like one, right? I've had various safety squat bars. I've had the Titan safety squat bar. I've had an Elite FTS yoke safety squat bar. But I'm here to tell you this is not a safety squat bar. I would just put it in the family of specialty bars for squatting. There are lots of different barbells that would fall into this family of specialty bars for squatting. The Mars Bar sits the bar a lot lower on your back, and that's the easiest way to think about the Mars Bar and what it is. It's a specialty bar to mimic a low bar squat. If you've never paid attention to the way that you place the bar on your back, you might want to take a look. Film yourself from the side and see where you normally put the bar. For years I squatted and I never realized that I was always in a high bar position. But with the Mars Bar, you can kind of think of it as a safety squat bar for low bar, if you're going to have to call it that. Some criticism that I've seen online for the Mars Bar is that although it mimics a low bar squat, it is even lower than what most people would naturally do for a low bar squat. It takes the bar and places it even closer to your hips, which shifts the musculature used in your posterior chain to do a squat. We'll touch more on that a little later when we get into usage. But right now, let's talk about the history of this because the Mars Bar is far from the first barbell to use a harness and be intended for squatting. I know most of you are probably tuning in to watch the review of this Mars Bar. However, this is Vintage Weights PGH, and I can't let you get away without telling you a little bit about the history of specialty squat bars. So just indulge me for 1 minute, I'll even set a timer, and let's get into the history. The safety squat bar was invented by Jesse Hoagland, who patented it in 1984. A lot of people think that Dr. Fred Hatfield, as in Hatfield squats, was the one who invented the safety squat bar, but really it was Jesse Hoagland. Dr. Hatfield popularized the safety squat bar when he was training for his 1,000-pound record-breaking squat. This wasn't the first specialty squat bar though. There were many before it. Many bars just naturally bent and then people used it. You can watch Pumping Iron with Arnold Schwarzenegger using a bent bar to do squats. But then if you rewind even more to the 1960s, there was Perry Rader in Iron Man magazine with the magic circle. And then there's also in the 1980s, the leg blaster. I have a Mars leg blaster, an original, but kind of like the safety squat bar, Jim Moore invented the leg blaster but Frank Zane popularized it, and people commonly mistake Frank Zane for being the inventor. Fast forward even more, and you get, ooh, that's 1 minute, and I almost got to this bar, so I'm going to squeeze in a little more history. Zach Mars invented the Mars bar because as a powerlifter, he was racking up all kinds of injuries after a while, so he wanted a bar that could mimic a low bar squat, and safety squat bars, in his words, were putting too much pressure on his neck. Now on to the review. Let's talk about what this bar actually is. What's it made of? What are the different characteristics? The original Mars bar, which retails for $650 at Rogue Fitness, is 65 pounds. That's quite heavy compared to most 45-pound barbells. The reason why it's 65 pounds is that this is a solid steel shaft that's about 1.5 inches thick that also has welded handles onto it. These handles do not screw in. This is one solid piece. The sleeves are hard chrome and they get attached with a bolt. I assume that's for shipping purposes, to ship a little bit cheaper, even though it is still quite expensive to ship. The current Mars bars, whether you get the original or the 2.0, are powder coated. They used to be clear coated and even I think have a bare steel finish. I'm so glad they went to this powder coat. For example, the Elite FTS yoke safety squat bar I used to have had a clear finish and it ended up looking like crap. The only damage that I've seen to the powder coat of my Mars bar is actually from my own doing. Where I store this on my barbell storage racks, it actually hits the edges of the plastic, and even though it's hitting the plastic, it's scratching up the powder coat. I could store this somewhere different. I did see this scratch the very first time and then decide to keep on putting it in there because it's just the most convenient for me.
I also like to live dangerously.
And I don't plan on getting rid of this barbell ever. Getting back to the actual bar itself, the original Mars bar is 65 pounds because of the solid steel piping, but the Mars bar 2.0 is a hollow piping, which brings it down to 35 pounds. I tried the Mars bar 2.0 at Home Gym Con, and I was shocked at how light it was. The sleeves are ribbed, and I find it to be an aggressive groove that's on them. Ribbed sleeves get a lot of criticism for the noise that they make when you put a plate on and off. I don't personally mind that much. I lift in my basement home gym, and my family's asleep upstairs when I'm lifting in the morning, but these grooved, ribbed sleeves aren't that loud when I load them that it's waking up my family. So for me personally, it's not a big deal. One thing that I really like would be the inner collar for 2 reasons. I really like that the inner collar is beveled on either side. That's just a nice touch that makes it look a little nicer. And then it's actually grooved and ribbed just like the sleeve, which I think doesn't really have a purpose, but aesthetically just makes it look nice. The end of the sleeve has an end cap with the Mars bar logo on it, and the sleeve, as I said, is attached with this bolt, and I just kind of like that look. It reminds me of some older barbells, like Jackson barbells, where there's a big bolt in the sleeve. So that's just kind of a cool look when it's on the inner collar. I'm not talking about the end of the sleeve, I'm talking about the inner collar having this big bolt. This video is being filmed in 2025, and a recent update in the past year would be the padding. So when the Mars bar first came out, it had sort of a pad kind of like a safety squat bar would have, where there was this kind of like inner cushion that had a sort of covering to it. Then they had a foam injected mold pad that was attached to it permanently, but the problem there was that you couldn't replace it. In the year that I've been using this, I haven't seen any damage to this pad, so I don't really think the pad is going to break down anytime soon after purchasing it. However, when I spoke to Solid Bar Fitness both on my podcast, Home Gym History, and in person at Home Gym Con, they told me how customers had emailed asking for a replacement pad because their dog had chewed up the pad, because their child had unfortunately taken a chunk out of the padding. And listen, I know to those of you without children that might sound very odd. Why would your child rip apart your Mars bar? But I'm here to tell you, as a father of 4 children, they are destructive sometimes. So I can totally see that happening.
Whoa, Mama!
So then this is the updated pad. It's still an injection mold, but then it fits onto the Mars bar and it's not glued on there or anything. Like, you can actually take it off. Like, I can take this off right now if I so choose, which I'm laughing because it leaves the Mars bar looking a little naked. But you've got this pad, so if for some reason something happens and your pad gets damaged, you can contact Mars Bar and buy a new one to put it onto the Mars Bar. I think this is a great feature for gym owners, commercial gym owners, because think about it from that angle, from a business side of things. If you're having frequent use, if you're having tons of your gym members using a Mars Bar that you just invested, $750 plus in, it's kind of nice if one of the goofball gym members messes up your pad, or if it just gets worn down over the years, that you could replace it and then keep on using this. It's a sound investment for a commercial gym for that reason. Now let's get this thing dressed again before I keep going with this review. Jeez. I talked about the durability of the pad a little bit, but how firm is it? How squishy is it? Like the story of the three little bears, like, is it just right? In my opinion, I think it is just right. It's not as squishy as like an ab mat, for example, but it is a little squishy. It gives a little bit if I were to squeeze it with my hand. So that, in my opinion, is the right amount for comfort sitting over your shoulders, because this is a harness basically. Coop on Garage Gym Reviews, when this first came out 6 years ago, pointed out that it felt kind of like a roller coaster, and that's exactly what I felt whenever I first put this on. It's just like whenever you get on a roller coaster and you latch down that overhead thing, because you're feeling pressure all the way around, starting right about here on your pecs, going up and through your shoulders, and then pressing on your back. Of course, you can move around and adjust that a little bit, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So what are the dimensions of the Mars Bar? Well, the original Mars Bar is 89 inches long, whereas the 2.0 is 82 inches long. That's one of the things with the design of the 2.0 that might make it nice for you as a consumer, because it might be a little easier to get into your rack. I have to do a kayak maneuver basically to put the Mars Bar into my power rack. I don't really mind, it's fine. I'm not the strongest man on earth, but I can handle 65 pounds and just kind of kayak my way into the rack. However, if that sounds daunting to you, you might want to consider the 2.0 that only weighs 35 pounds and that is only 82 inches long. Why is it only 82 inches long? Well, it has to do with the length of the bar as well as the loadable length of the sleeves. On the original Mars Bar, the loadable length of the sleeve is 16¼ inches. On the 2.0 Mars Bar, it's only 12¼ inches. The 2.0 has a weight capacity of 400 pounds, so you might not be loading it all the way out past 12 inches anyway. Whereas the weight capacity of the original Mars Bar is over 1,200 pounds, and unless you're like Deadliest Lift Mark out there doing all kinds of wild stuff with it, I doubt you're really gonna need a 1,200 pound capacity barbell. So take that into consideration. Now that you have a good idea of what the Mars Bar is and where it came from historically, let's talk about the different uses of the Mars Bar. So the first use would just be squatting. I find that whenever I get into the bar itself, I like to wedge in like a 45-degree angle up into my uprights, if you will, pressing into the J cup so that I really get my shoulders into the best position. If I just come straight up, sometimes they're a little too far back, a little too far forward. As far as squatting with the bar, whenever you come down to the lowest position, this handle I find is not cumbersome or in the way, so it's not too long. One thing I forgot to mention with the makeup of it is that there's nothing special about the handle. It's just this like kind of vinyl or rubber coated cap that goes on the end here. I already touched on the different styles of squatting in terms of high bar and low bar and the advantage of this, but I really want to emphasize that the thing that stood out to me when I started using the Mars Bar to squat was just how different it was from my normal squatting, how different it was from the normal way I position a barbell. This really puts a lot of it onto your hips So when you're squatting, don't be shocked if you're going to lift more weight with the Mars bar, but also don't be shocked by those DOMs, by that delayed onset muscle fatigue. I think that's what DOM stands for. Anyway, so muscle soreness, there you go. So don't be surprised that you're sore in a little different ways the next day than your normal squatting session. When it comes to using the Mars bar for other purposes, you can do good mornings, you can do lunges, you can do Hatfield squats, you can do all kinds of hands-free things. Like this just sits on your shoulders. You can move around with this thing. If it wasn't pouring rain outside right now here in Pittsburgh, I might just take a walk with it down the street.
I also like to live dangerously.
One of the big inspirations for Zach Mars inventing the Mars bar in the first place was to overcome some injuries that he had, and since the invention of it and the marketing of it over the last 6 years, it's been used in a rehab kind of purpose. So if you have any type of injury or anything like that, it might be useful. And it's nice to know that I could grow old with my Mars bar. As an old man, still keep on squatting. Thankfully, I'm blessed with good health for the most part now at this middle-aged point of my life. So how do I use it? I cycle this in and out of my programming. I said that I've been using this for about a year, but really I've been using this for around 6 months because I've been cycling in and out of using it. I've been using this Mars bar for about 4 to 6 weeks, and then I'd switch to a high bar position using my Appalachian bar or using one of my regular power bars for squatting. Then I'd cycle back to the Mars bar. It was a real treat every time I came back to it in my programming because it's just comfortable. Like I'm filming most of this review with it sitting on my shoulders. Before we move on from the uses of the Mars bar, I want to mention one of my favorite uses, and that's calf raises. So I've been working on my chicken legs. I've been trying to grow those calves. What I realized was once I have this already loaded up for squats and it's sitting in a J-cups, it's really easy for me to then, when I'm finished with my squats, step under, get it on my back, go hands-free and hold on to my uprights and do calf raises. As far as what I would advise Solid Bar to change about the Mars bar, and if you haven't caught on, Solid Bar Fitness is the company that makes the Mars bar. Zach Mars is the inventor of the Mars bar. Anyway, I don't have many recommendations because they've already made several modifications over the years. Over the past 6 years, they've changed the padding 3 times. They've updated the coating. Now it's this durable powder coat. They've changed the sleeves. They've made the sleeves attachable. They have the 2.0 Mars bar. So they've been working on this thing and taking feedback from customers and reviewers. And that's a big selling point for me, is that they haven't just kept this the same. One of the other safety squat bars I mentioned in this video has literally been the same for like 20 years, practically. So good on you, Solid Bar and Zach Mars, for updating this. A couple little things that I would mention.
I've made a huge mistake.
Since there is a lot of criticism out there in general for ribbed sleeves, grooved sleeves, maybe make the grooves on the sleeve a little less aggressive. And that way you tame that criticism a little bit. The other thing I'd mention is that when using this, the weights tend to squeak a little bit, make some noises a little bit since there's no revolving sleeves. I don't think I would change that. I don't think I'd put revolving sleeves on here, but it's just kind of something that to point out. Another consideration, which isn't really a fixable one, but just something to keep in mind, would be that this sucker will spin around. So whenever you get out from under it, just be careful that it doesn't catch you in the face.
It's the poor carpenter that blames his shoddy tools for the ow! Face!
And then the only other thing I would mention is just the ends of the handles, the caps that are on here, that they come off a little cheap. They're just kind of phoned in, whereas the rest of the bar has really been honed over the years to being a higher end barbell that someone would enjoy after paying so much for a specialty bar. How would you improve that? Well, it's clearly going to increase the cost exponentially if you were to put knurled handles on, because this is one solid bar. So I don't think I would go that far, but maybe look at some different options. Maybe there's some that have a little texture on them in some way that would just be a slight upgrade. These are pretty nitpicky criticisms. Lifters, viewers, you can ascertain that I really like this bar. I think this is a solid purchase for a lot of people, but exactly for who? So let's look into my recommendations on who would benefit the most from the original Mars bar and from the Mars bar 2.0. First, let's talk about cost, because this is expensive compared to just about every other barbell you might be buying to do squats with. I'm going to reference my notes here and give you the exact breakdown of the cost. Please note though that the shipping estimate is from Rogue Fitness to Pittsburgh, where I live, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it might differ somewhat depending on where you live. The original Mars bar with the solid steel bar is $650. Whereas the Mars Bar 2.0 is $635. That's right, only $15 difference. So you've got 65 pounds and 35 pounds. You've got 89 inches total length and 82 inches total length. That isn't the end of the cost though, because shipping is quite a bit, especially for the 65-pound original Mars bar. So here to Pittsburgh, shipping is $102.13. Tax comes out to $52.58. Once you add that all up, the total price from Rogue Fitness to my door would be $803.71. So over $800 for the original Mars bar. For the Mars bar 2.0, the shipping drops significantly because of the lesser weight. It's only $27.83 to ship the Mars bar 2.0. You throw in $46 and change of tax, and it brings the total price of the Mars bar 2.0 to $709.23. So a total cost difference of about $100 between the original Mars bar and the Mars bar 2.0. The next consideration might be storage, that this barbell is larger not just in length but also in width than most of any of the other barbells I have, with the exception of maybe a trap bar. This bar stands out. I was able to put it on my barbell rack at the very bottom position, but you might have to find a different way to store this sucker. Maybe you lean it in a corner, maybe you put it on the ground. My buddy Darko at Darko Lifting has a great solution, the Darko Anchor. Darko explained to me on my Home Gym History podcast that part of the inspiration to invent his product, the Anchor, was the Mars bar. He was tired of doing the kayak to get into his rack, and that's what inspired him to just keep the bar in his rack by just hanging it up on his product, the Barbell Anchor. So check out Darko's Barbell Anchor. I'll drop a link for it in the description. Next up would be just what kind of lifter you are. So in general, before we break down the 2.0 versus the original, if you lift regularly enough and you do squats regularly enough that it would be a welcome change of pace to cycle this into your lifting, then this bar might be for you. If you have any type of injury or any type of discomfort getting into a squatting position with a regular barbell, this bar might be for you. If you regularly only high bar squat the way I have been doing for 20 years, then wow, this bar is going to change your life, because it really changed the way that I have been lifting the past year. I can't speak enough to that this is a really great way to throw a little variety into your training program if you high bar squat, because this is going to put the bar much lower. As far as the original versus a 2.0, not only does it come down to price, but it also is a factor of how comfortable you are handling the 65-pound bar versus the 35-pound bar. So when you're putting this thing into the rack and you've got to curl it basically the way that I did to put it up into the J-cups, are you okay with 65 pounds? When it comes to just putting this on your back and warming up with it empty, are you okay with 65 pounds? Do you want that on the flip side? Like, are you lifting quite heavy? Because the weight capacity of the 2.0 is 400 pounds. So if you see yourself squatting more than 400 pounds, well, then you might want to get the original Mars bar rather than the 2.0 to make sure that you have the proper weight capacity. Personally, I like to have a little wiggle room with weight capacity. I don't think I need 1,200 pounds weight capacity like this, but I do feel like I need more than 400 pounds weight capacity, so that's why I went with the original Mars bar versus the 2.0. If you enjoyed this video, please consider purchasing the Mars bar through my Rogue Fitness affiliate link that is in the description. It'll be the same cost to you, and it will really help my channel. So please consider purchasing your Mars bar or your Mars bar 2.0 through my Rogue Fitness affiliate link. I hope you enjoyed this review. Please like, subscribe, comment, all that happy stuff. Thanks for watching Vintage Weights PGH.